right, so I want to talk about the Bible today, and I know I already sound like a youth pastor. It's, hey guys, it's Friday night. Who's up for a game of Christian charades? All right, why not? No, it's not that, and no offense anyway, but it's not that. It's more of an objective way to kind of look at the Bible and ask the question that I asked a few years ago, saying, why? Why should I trust it? It's a bunch of stories were written 100 years after the fact. Why trust it? So I looked into it, and I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to do a PowerPoint. Good stuff. It's always fun, but I promise it's not bad. And if you stick with it, there's some important things that I want to go over candidly at the end. But check this out. So we know it was written early. We know it's accurate. We know it's consistent. I'm going to go through these fast so we can get it in quickly. You can pause on any of these slides and go into them, but we'll go through it quickly. Written early. So if it were written in 200 or 300 AD, there'd be enough time for a legend to be created. That's true. I could see that. But what you'll see is that they weren't written at that time. In fact, there were eyewitnesses that could point out any falsities when the Gospels were being written. And you'll know this after I show you how accurate the Bible is. Paul actually references it in Corinthians 1. He says 500 people he appeared to, many of whom are still alive. Many of whom are still alive. He's saying to the reader, look, if you don't believe me, go ask them. Why else? How else could he say it with such confidence and conviction like that, unless it were true? So the dating of the Gospels. So we know that when Luke wrote Acts, James, Peter, and Paul were never mentioned. The siege of Jerusalem, never mentioned. Temple being destroyed, never mentioned. We know Luke writes Acts before that. We also know that Luke's write his gospel before that. We know that Paul quotes Luke, so we know his was written before that. We know that Luke quotes Mark, so we know Mark was written before that, estimated around 40 to 50 AD. That's not hundreds of years, that's a handful of years. There's not enough time for a legend to be created. In fact, or most importantly, anyone around could have just been like, hey, I was there, that never happened, what are you talking about? But no, they were writing these and spreading them out massively, widely. Anyone could have said that's not true, but they didn't. It spread. So here's where Paul references Luke. The worker deserves his wages in Timothy. Then he goes into what Luke said. The worker deserves his wages in Luke. Interesting. So the introduction, Luke, I included this because this is just cool to me. It's basically it's him saying, look, I'm not just going to do this willy-nilly. I'm going all full force into this, acting like a crime scene investigation. I'm talking to eyewitnesses, carefully investigating everything into an orderly account. I mean, he's going full force into this. Accuracy of the Bible. So we know it was written in the region. This is going to be very key, especially the names, vegetation, location, customs and laws, culture. Luke writes about all of it exactly, all the Gospels do. But check this out with the names. These are the most popular names, okay? You have all those. Now, when you have a very, very popular name, you're going to need a qualifier, like John the Baptist, or the brother of such and such, or Greg the big ears, or something that shows some kind of differentiating factor. But if your name is rare, you don't need one. So if you look, Simon is one. That's very, very important. So Simon is one. He's going to have a qualifier. Bartholomew is 50. He doesn't need a qualifier because his name's rare enough. Thaddeus doesn't need one. His name's rare enough. Judas, 4. He needs Iscariot. So if you take the top two men's names, Simon and Joseph, every document outside of the New Testament that we find, their frequency is 15.6% that those two names show up. In the Gospels and Acts, it's 18.2%. So that shows you, I mean, this was written accurately. I mean, the names and everything, it's more than a coincidence. It couldn't be. So archaeology also does this, and you can pause this and go through each one of these. You should look them up because they're pretty crazy. The Pontius Pilate rock, the crucifixion right here, evidence of that. They're actually, and then David, they thought that whole thing could have been a legend, a myth, until archaeology found a rock inscribed the house of David. So archaeology keeps proving the Bible correct. It's accurate. The prophecies fulfilled. Peter would deny him 3 times. Temple would be destroyed. Church would survive and grow. Preach to the world, never be forgotten. The last 3 could be a little bit subjective, but not really. It's factual. They all are. They all happen, and they were all prophesied in the New Testament. Luke describes regional culture, Roman citizenship, what it's like in trial, the currency, everything like that. He was obviously there. He knew what he was writing about. Consistency. This has not changed. So this is where it really started to get me. So Now, just say the oldest document we have from Isaiah translation say it was 300 AD. Well, all of a sudden, the Dead Sea Scrolls and Qumran were unearthed in the late 1940s, and we had Isaiah from 600 years before that. So beforehand, they were all saying, well, we don't know what changed from the original to what we have now. We have no idea. Now, all of a sudden, we knew. And we went through, we looked at the first one, looked at the one from 300 AD, say, compared the two, half of 1% to remain in doubt, half of 1%. So that means it's accurate. It's that exact over that many years. It's that exact, that half of 1%. And this is what we're talking about. We're talking about stylistic changes, different spelling, 17 letters. That would be different. 17 letters out of all how many years it was, 17 letters. These scribes did this. That's all they did was record things and write them. So you have that. That's pretty impressive right there. But the chain of custody as well. The Gospel of John, we have that, but we have it traced throughout history to his students who wrote letters, to their students who wrote letters, and on and on and on. And it kept going. So we know exactly where it was at all times. And the message, the principles never changed. So the authors had nothing to gain and everything to lose. Now, I took that last slide from J. Warner Wallace and Cold Case Christianity. Incredible site. You really should check it out. But he also went into something about biases. So the three motives for bias, in a crime or whatever, financial gain, sexual lust, pursuit of power. They didn't have any of those. They also judged everything afterward, not beforehand on events. And their willingness to die for what they were talking about. I mean, those are all pretty huge testaments to what happened. But this, the experiential relevance, this is really what got me. This is what made me believe. And Peter, you take him, you take all the apostles, how they changed drastically overnight to believe in Jesus out of nowhere. They just did this. But take three, Peter and Thomas first. Let's take them. Peter was a wish-washy kind of fair weather. He was ye of little faith. All of a sudden he sees the risen Jesus. Next day he's head of the church. He's out there proclaiming the word, no fear at all. Thomas, doubting Thomas, I'm not going to believe Jesus until I see him with my own eyes and touch his wounds. And then he falls down to the ground, Dominus meus, Deus meus, my Lord, my God. And he believed just like that, went to India, spread the word. But the most important one to me that I found was Saul. Now, this was this educated Jew. He was basically Pharisee, born of Pharisees. He was the guy that was going to be, basically headed to great power and everything like that. Well-educated. He hated Christians. He spearheaded campaigns to round up the Christians and kill them. He hated them. He saw Stephen martyred. He actually oversaw that. All of a sudden, he's on his way to Damascus to round up the Christians when he's confronted by the risen Jesus. He's stricken blind, and Jesus talks to him, tells him what he needs him to do to spread the word. All of a sudden, Saul becomes Paul. Paul talks about him seeing Jesus. The very next day, in essence, he's out proclaiming in the synagogue saying he is the Son of God. This is real, guys. This is real. It's true. Everything is true. And they were saying, the people were saying, is this not the man that made havoc in Jerusalem? Is this not the man that said, hey, all Christians should die, let's go get him? Is he not the number one hating Christian? Why would he be saying all this? Why? He went from that top killer of Christians to writing 1/3 of the New Testament. So that's the thing. I mean, you got to ask yourself, why? So think about it. I mean, think, what would you do if you had a friend, he was sitting there saying he's the Son of God, and he goes out and proclaims all these things, performs miracles, does all this stuff that's too fantastic to believe, and then all of a sudden he's executed in the most humiliating way. You'd go, you'd be afraid, you'd be heartbroken, you'd be like, I guess I got that wrong, I don't know. Then all of a sudden he comes back, and you see your friend standing there saying, look, I'm back. Everything I said was true. Here's the proof. It's true. Do what I said, and you're there. Heaven is waiting. What would you do? You'd go out and scream from the rooftops. Tell everyone you could. You'd be pulled into trial just like Peter, and they'd say, stop talking about Jesus right now, or we'll put you in jail or kill you. You'd laugh just like Peter did. You'd say, what are you going to do to me, this mere mortal? This is nothing. This is nothing at all. There's something so much bigger, and I just saw my best friend come back and prove it to me. So think for a second. God's creation, the only way to find out if something really loves you is to let it go, give it free will to decide to love you. So you know if it loves you. That's the test. That's the whole point of this life, is to grasp this concept, is to find your love for God so you can make your way home. The Bible is accurate. The Bible is real. It's the most important thing you can do. Thank you. God bless.